Commerce, Justice, Science, Appropriations Subcommittee on today is we're very pleased to present the fiscal year 2016 bill to the subcommittee for your consideration. And I want to begin by thanking my good friend, our ranking member, Chaka Fatah. It's been a real privilege to work with you, Chaka, over the years that I've been on this subcommittee. This is the first assignment I ever asked for, was to be on this subcommittee, Mr. Chairman, to be a part of this, working with you, Robert, and Ms. Lowy, all the members of this subcommittee. Mr. Serrano has been, we've been together since I first started. Terrific to have these new members and to find so much common ground in our shared passion for law enforcement, for supporting the nation's scientific research and space exploration. The vitally important work this committee has done over the years has been a great source of comfort and encouragement to me in my time in Congress, and it's particularly nice to see the bipartisan work that we do together. And you've improved this bill, Chaka, and it's been a real pleasure to work with you as my ranking member on this. Frank Wolf has been a role model and a dear good friend, and he blazed a good path for us to follow in the time that he chaired this subcommittee. And I know that all of us believe we'd love to have additional funds to work with, but we thank you, Chairman Rogers, for your very generous allocation within the boundaries that we are forced to live within. The law requires us to spend only so much money under the Budget Control Act, and sequestration is intended to do our very best to get the nation back on track to a balanced budget. We simply have to do everything we can to live within our means, and we have a difficult problem. Chairman Rogers has been very generous in his allocation to this subcommittee within those hard and fast limits that require a change in the law. I deeply appreciate your allocation to this subcommittee, Mr. Chairman, and above all your trust in me and having the confidence in me to chair this subcommittee, which I know is near and dear to your heart. You've enjoyed it as much as I have over the years. I believe this was your first subcommittee when you came first, and the one you asked for specifically.
Oh, yeah.
And you used to have State Department.
Used to have State Department.
Imagine, Ms. Lowy, what a tangle we'd have today if we still had the State Department, Mr. Chairman. What an extraordinary subcommittee, and I thank you, Robert, for all your help. You still do? That's right, yeah. Yeah, you do. You're still married to him. Yeah. Absolutely. 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 It truly is. One of the great things about this committee as a whole, and this subcommittee in particular, is the way in which we all find common ground and find a way to work together to find the best solutions for the country within the money that's available to us. And no matter how, even if we disagree occasionally in representing our districts and their political philosophy, to do our best to do the right thing for the right reasons for our district and we always find a way to come together for the country. And it really is, I think, the best subcommittee in this whole outfit. And what a privilege to be here. We have an extraordinarily capable staff. Bob and John and the folks that work with you, I want to thank you from the bottom of our heart for your hard work in putting this together and making. I can't even imagine how many hours you all must put in on this bill to make this work. An incredible amount of effort and time to balance all of the competing interests within the limited amount of funds that we must live within. I follow Dave Ramsey at home to don't spend any more money than you've got. Finally was able to eliminate all my debt this year for the first time to get our daughter ready to go to college. I've got college paid for and no debt. I'll do my best as a member of Congress to get the country in that same place. So I use it in my personal life. My district wants us to follow that for the country, and I know wish we had more money for law enforcement and the sciences, but as Dave Ramsey recommends, you just don't spend more money than you've got. So we're trying to follow that in this committee as a whole overall. And we've got a very broad range of responsibility in this subcommittee to make sure that the nation's law enforcement agencies are fully funded, that they have the resources they need in an era of metastasizing terrorist threats that are threatening us at home and abroad, in an era of cybercrime when criminals and people who want to do this country harm used to be able to had to send people over personally to go steal information out of a file or take a photograph with a camera on a micro dot. Today they can just stay at home in their countries overseas and log on to a computer and steal all they want and break for lunch and come log back on after lunch and log on again and come steal whatever they want. And we've got extraordinarily capable people at the FBI and our Department of Justice and our law enforcement agencies that are doing great things quietly and effectively to protect this country against cybercrime. And it's one of our most important responsibilities to make sure that we have given those good people all the resources they need to protect this nation in the cyber world and the real world. We have the responsibility to enforce our trade laws and ensuring that weather forecasting is the best it can possibly be for the sake of the economy and the safety of our countrymen, managing our fisheries, and advancing scientific research and space exploration. So we have a whole variety of extraordinarily important issues that touch in so many ways, both on our practical day-to-day life in protecting the nation, enforcing our laws, and in advancing the human spirit in the scope of human knowledge. It's an extraordinary subcommittee, and we have in the bill we present today to the subcommittee a $51.4 billion funding bill, which is 2.5% more than last year, but $661 million below the President's request, which of course we simply can't do because the President's budget request assumes tax increases and things that would require changes in law, which are not likely to happen. And again, we're forced to live within that cap that the sequestration and the Budget Control Act give us. So Chairman Rogers has given us the most generous suballocation that he can, and we certainly appreciate it. It's sufficient to fund priority programs, but we've been forced, of course, to reduce funding for activities that are less essential. And we have done everything we can in this bill in close cooperation, working together, Chaka, and with everyone on the subcommittee to be sure that the priorities of the members of the subcommittee are met. But we all are in agreement that we've got to take care of our law enforcement community as a top priority for the nation and for this committee, Mr. Chairman. We've given I think the FBI is sort of at the top of the list, extraordinarily important work, and if you haven't had a chance to go over there and visit with them and see firsthand some of the incredible things they are doing to protect this nation, you should. We've given them a $111 million increase over last year, and in fact $64 million above the request. We have given them the resources they need to enhance their efforts to protect the nation against cybercrime and espionage and terrorism. And we have an extraordinary number of capable people over there. We're very, very proud of them, and we put the FBI at the very top of our list, Mr. Chairman, to take care of. We also have an immense problem at our southern border and with immigration in general. This committee has jurisdiction over the immigration judges, and we have increased funding for those immigration judges to be sure that we're going to be hiring 55 new immigration judge teams to reduce the immense backlog of immigration cases. We've made sure that the law enforcement team that the federal government has to enforce the laws of this nation are funded, that they're given increases in the U.S. Attorney's Office, the Marshals Service, the DEA, the ATF, the prison system. We've made sure that the front line of law enforcement in this nation is not only given what they've asked, we've increased funding for them anywhere we felt like they needed it and it would be particularly effective. We've increased program funding for priority law enforcement programs such as the BURN formula program, state criminal alien assistance program, which is so important to so many of us in this room that have local jails and state prisons full of criminal aliens who have broken our state laws and injured our constituents, either property or personal crimes. Youth mentoring programs, which work so well, we've made sure that they are taken care of. And we've also created in the bill a community trust program that's designed to fund body cameras for police officers as a demonstration program in order to do everything we can to help restore the bond of trust that has to exist between police officers and local citizens. And It's also designed to be sure that our state law will control when, where, and how that data is accessed. The program is limited to the purchase of equipment because as you begin to look at this extraordinarily important initiative to use body cameras for police officers to, again, make sure we restore that bond of trust, the data storage is what will be immensely, and I can't even see how, it's almost infinitely expensive. So we've limited this to purchasing equipment, Mr. Chairman, because we don't want this to get out of control. And we'll let the local agencies handle the data storage and let state law decide when, where, and how. The state of Kentucky or Alabama decide when, where, and how you're going to get to access that data in a court proceeding. Scientific research is so important to the nation. The National Science Foundation, NASA, space exploration are vitally important not only for the for our current prosperity, but for future prosperity. And I've always viewed, as I know you do, the National Science Foundation and NASA as strategic assets to the country. So we've provided a $519 million increase to NASA. We have done as much as we can in this bill within the limits set on us by the Budget Control Act to ensure that we get back our manned space program back into space as quickly as humanly possible. The bill provides for a significant increase in resources for the SLS program and the Orion crew vehicles fully funded. Exploration ground systems, we're going to make sure we get humans back into low Earth orbit and to and a deep space as soon as we can. We have fully funded critical scientific missions and technology programs, including restoring proposed reductions to the planetary science program, which is so vitally important. We've also made sure that we provide guidance to NASA in this bill that they follow the decadal surveys. If you're not familiar with it, it to me is the gold standard that we ought to be following not only in NASA, but to the extent we can do so also with the National Science Foundation. They get the best minds in the field together and every 10 years and map out their priorities. And the result is the decadal survey in different areas of scientific research and exploration that has given guidance to NASA. And our committee report directs NASA to follow the direction of those decadal surveys, the recommendations of the best minds in their fields, in prioritizing NASA's activities during fiscal year 16 and into the future. Now we have in making sure that law enforcement is fully funded, that NASA is fully funded. NASA is not where it needs to be. We're going to continue to work to get them back where they get back to a good cadence, Robert, on the SLS program. And in the years ahead, we're going to work hard to get more money. But in order to fund law enforcement, NASA, wish we had more money for the National Science Foundation, but we increased them $50 million above what was a historically high level of funding in the 15 bill. National Science Foundation got a record amount of money last year. That was a historic high for them, and they have any additional funds we're able to come up with later in the year. We do have through this subcommittee the ability to. There are funds that we appreciate very much, Mr. Chairman, making available in the through a variety of sources. We may have additional funds later in the year, and we'll certainly do everything we can to prioritize that funding for the National Science Foundation and any other critical needs that pop up in the meantime. But we found an additional $50 million for the National Science Foundation this year, and we've also fully funded the BRAIN initiative that my good friend Chaka Fatah has championed over the years, which is so extraordinarily important in order to understand the most complicated and important organ in the human body, the human mind. And it holds great promise for the future, and I'm happy to make sure we got that fully funded. We've also prioritized funding for NOAA within the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration for weather forecasting. We've made sure that the fisheries are taken care of. A lot of folks in this committee that know a lot more about fisheries than I do. As a Houstonian, it's keenly important to us. I've grown up on the Gulf Coast and have a pretty good knowledge of it, but there's a lot of experience in this committee, and I've deferred to your good judgment. I hope y'all are pleased that we've done everything we could do for fisheries. I'm still interested in any additional innovative suggestions you've got on how to protect the salmon population from. You've got. Want to make sure we're helping you with your salmon as much as we can. They're a great natural resource. We have also funded the Joint Polar Satellite System and the Geostationary Operational Environmental Satellite Series. Again, focusing on weather forecasting. We just simply didn't have enough money to do everything we wanted to do within NOAA, so we prioritized funding on those most important functions in each one of these categories, and in NOAA, that's weather forecasting. So we have had to eliminate some programs that are no longer necessary, that are not critical to the operations of the federal government, or who have long expired their authorizations, Mr. Chairman, and we have frozen or reduced funding for more than a dozen bureaus, agencies, and programs that can operate with a little less. We've added, I'd also want to point out some oversight provisions that are important before I recognize my good friend Mr. Fattah, that we've asked each agency under our jurisdiction to submit a spending plan. Extraordinarily important for Congress to have that ongoing oversight, something which we will do together throughout the course of the year. We'll make sure that we're watching after our these agencies under our jurisdiction, arm in arm. We'll do that together. Our taxpayers' hard-earned dollars are very precious and scarce, and we want to make sure these agencies are not wasting them, and also that they're following the law as written by Congress. Very important to enforce the law written by Congress. Capping life cycle costs for poorly performing programs. We're going to withhold some Department of Justice funding, quite frankly, until the Attorney General, and I wish her well and wish her great success. We, however, want to see her deal with this absolutely outrageous and disgraceful report we got from the Inspector General with the DEA agents in Colombia. If you're, I'm sure, have seen, it's a deep embarrassment and mortifying to see that our DEA agents in Colombia would engage in this behavior, and allegations of sexual harassments, grotesquely inappropriate conduct, and we haven't seen anybody fired yet. It needs to happen, and we haven't seen anybody disciplined yet appropriately in response to that report. So we're withholding some of the DOJ money until we see action on dealing with these folks that have engaged in this behavior over the years. It's not only utterly inappropriate and embarrassing and mortifying for the country, it's just absolutely unacceptable. So we're going to make sure that those folks involved in that get disciplined, and the Attorney General's got a lot on their plate, but we want to see that dealt with. We're going to make sure that agencies that are purchasing very important and sensitive information technology systems have complied with have consulted with the FBI before they go out and purchase communications equipment. There's if our enemies have discovered that you can hardwire Trojan horses into communications equipment, modems, routers, computer systems, and they're very difficult to detect. And the FBI has become expert at spotting these problems. And so we've set up a procedure here, Mr. Chairman, that would allow these agencies that are making these purchases just go consult with the FBI and try to comply with the FBI good housekeeping seal of approval, so to speak, on computer systems before you purchase it. We're going to make sure that our immigration judges are giving us quarterly reports. We're going to make sure that the Inspector Generals get access to the information they need to do their job. And we've also, of course, continued a number of provisions that have been in the bill for several years to protect the Second Amendment rights of Americans and make sure that we're not transferring people out of Gitmo into the United States. And I want to conclude by thanking all of you for your help, your guidance, and support. I am particularly pleased to have had the chance to work with Chaka Fattah these past many years. I've been on the subcommittee, and you've been an indispensable friend and ally in this effort, Chaka, and I'm pleased to recognize my good friend from Pennsylvania, Mr. Fattah, at this time.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I think that as the new chair of the subcommittee, you can be rightfully proud of the product and the process that you have led us through. Obviously, there would be maybe differences on some of these items if I was in your chair and you were in my chair. But let me say that there could be no improvement on the process. You indicated that you would work with us on our priorities, and you've done that. And I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about that. But you've also, even in the matter of the spend plan on DOJ, there was an extensive consultation between our staffs, and all of our concerns were resolved. So I just want to thank you publicly. You already know this, but to make sure everyone else knows the collegial nature of our working together. And I think that it is, the Congress can be proud of your genuine interest, particularly in the matters related to the jurisdiction of the subcommittee, but I'm speaking now about science. I was at the dinner for the National Academy of Sciences, and the chairman, who had just retired, flew in for the dinner, and he said he got a chance to sit with you. And he talked about the significant interactions that you had around the various aspects of the science enterprise in our nation. So let me start there. Let me start with thanking you for your support for our neuroscience initiative. It's $146 million, the largest amount ever for this effort, embedded in the chairman's mark. I want to thank you for that, along with $3 million for our effort that we launched in last year's bill, the National Brain Observatory. In the continuing support for the interagency working group, which really was the beginning foundation, which was launched by this committee with bipartisan support, and with the full committee's bipartisan support. I mean, this issue of neuroscience or brain health is very, very important. We have some 50 million Americans suffering from brain diseases or disorders, 1 billion people worldwide by the count of the World Health Organization, and there's no other country in the world better able to take on this challenge. And the fact that we are doing it and that it's being led through the work of the Congress, I think is also of note, because sometimes some indication that congressional priorities are somehow less than priorities of other branches of the government, and I don't think that's the case at all. And I think that in this instance, we are right at the point of the spear in terms of dealing with a science-related and health-related issue that's very important to every family in the country. So I want to thank you, and as part thereof, to talk about the broader picture, because basic science investigation is critical, not just to neuroscience, but across the board. So there's $7.39 billion for the National Science Foundation. I think is a great place for me to start. This talk about how the allocations meet the nation's responsibilities. Also in the Commerce Department, the support you and your staff have given to the National Weather Service and to the satellite programs, which have been fully funded, the GOES and, in the other satellite programs, I think were remarkable within the allocation that you were able to stretch in such a way to get that done. NASA is, I don't think any of us are surprised that NASA has done well, because the chairman has an interest in this area, but it is a national imperative. With so many of our economic competitors and other types of competitors now focused on space, it's important that our country continue to lead the world in this area. And I think that the investments made of over $18 billion in that area are important. There are obviously, as I mentioned, other areas, and I want to put these together. The youth mentoring number, which is at the highest ever, which is an important priority, not just of the minority, but of the whole committee, in working with making sure that our young people get every opportunity to be successful. And also to deal with some of those young people who may have had some challenges. Your investment in the Second Chance Act, $68 million, justice reinvestment programs. I think the drug courts and the veterans courts are very important. So there are throughout, when we talk about DOJ and law enforcement, it's not just the stick, there's also the carrot. And I think that's important to point out as we deal with the chairman's mark. As I mentioned, there are probably some items that we would have different numbers on. I want to make sure I mention those too. Legal Services Corporation, I think we're going to work together, hopefully to try to improve the census, even though we make an investment, there may be, as we prepare for the 2020 census, and I know you set aside some $200 million for that, there may be for parts of that activity in the community survey area, we may have to do some some efforts to convince you that there may be more that we can do in that regard. But I want to say to the subcommittee, we do not plan on asking for any recorded vote, but I think that this is a bill that, given the allocation, you've made a very sincere effort to deal with the country's needs. There are still some issues, but I think that whether it's the salmon hatcheries in Washington State or you know, the significant challenges related to you know, our investigation and activities relative to planetary science. You have done a lot to benefit science. The investments at commerce, particularly in terms of minority business development and in some of the other areas of science, and trade enforcement activities, I think are important to the country. So I want to thank you publicly for the work that you have done and for your friendship. We've been friends for many, many years, and to have the opportunity to work with you on these important issues. I know you say this is the favorite bill, and I know the chairman and the ranking member can't join in on this, but this is the best bill of all of the bills we have to do in the Appropriations Committee, because it has within it all of the important shaping impulses for our country in terms of innovation and investment and promotion of American commerce and building our economy, which is our singular strength. It's the reason why we can have the greatest military in the world, and so we have to make sure that the American economy continues to grow and go forward. And because of the investments we've made at commerce and in some other areas, we've seen 60-plus months of increases in employment. We've seen, notwithstanding our economic competitors having poor economic performance in terms of their gross domestic product, ours has grown. And again, I think the Congress has been a partner in these activities. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chuck. I couldn't have said it better. That we do in this bill have within its jurisdiction all of the worst.
I know Chairman Rogers and our ranking member, although he can't say that any particular one of these bills is more important than the other, but I can. Thank you.
It is indeed a great subcommittee with great jurisdiction. I wish indeed we had more money for legal services, and they do great work, but we can.
I'm going to work on you as we go forward.
Well, I'm going to actually be authoring legislation I'd love to have your help with. I was just talking to Mr. Serrano about to let attorneys, and we frankly ought to include doctors, to have a dollar-for-dollar deduction. If they donate their time pro bono, they ought to be able to deduct from their taxes their value of their hourly rate for their work for the poor. And I think you'd have lawyers beating down the doors to help represent poor people. So direct appropriated dollars earned by our constituents are so scarce and so difficult. We can find another way, I think, to help legal services. So we just had to prioritize, Mr. Chairman. So we'll work on that together. But it is my privilege to recognize the chairman of the full committee, the gentleman from Kentucky, Mr. Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations on your first bill, your maiden voyage, I might say, in the choppy seas of politics. When we had an opening for chair on this subcommittee, one person just lobbied me to death, and I was looking for, you know, a calm, sedate, low-key, laid-back chairman. And when I told John that I wanted him to be chairman of this subcommittee, there was this, what do you call that Texas scream?
Yeah.
And he jumped. He jumped up. He jumped up and down, and the whole Rayburn building was shaking. But he was very enthusiastic about this, and that's great. This subcommittee is a favorite of mine, Nita. I think we can say that, can't we? I certainly can. I came on this subcommittee in '83, and 2 years later was ranking member, and then maybe 2 years later became chairman, whenever that was. So I've been a chairman or ranking member of this subcommittee for, I don't know, 25 years or more, 30. And it is a favorite. It's got some great jurisdiction, a chance for us to work collegially on these bills. So and you've got a good bill. I've gone over it with you in great detail. The bill, as has been said, is $51.4 billion, which is as good as we could do on the 302Bs. Half of that, of course, is in the Department of Justice, 27.5. FBI, DEA, Marshals, ATF, and so forth, crime and terrorism. We've prioritized law enforcement programs focused on cyber intrusion and gangs and counterintelligence, as well as the abuse and diversion of prescription drugs, which I remind you, CDC has said is a national epidemic, our fastest growing drug threat. There's a grant program within Department of Justice that helps state-run prescription drug monitoring programs. All of your states have an agency like this, except Missouri, and they're on the way. But in your state, there is a computer system that requires doctors and veterinarians and pharmacies to report to that computer that John Jones just was filled a prescription for X members X drugs, so that he can't go to a second store and doctor shop and get another prescription. It's working, and I appreciate the chairman's inclusion of more funds for the PDMPs. And in the meantime, as we're beginning now to see, Mr. Chairman, a diminishment of prescription drug abuse deaths, overdose deaths, we're seeing heroin move back into the picture in a big way, and even more insidious drug. And so I hope that we can keep the fight going on drug abuse. Bureau of Prisons, we've got systemic overcrowding. These prisons are way over capacity and must be given some relief. And so I appreciate your including funds, more funds for BOP. EDA, you're funding at $250 million. Some 15 of that is to assist coal mining communities that are in disaster, including mine. I've lost 8,000 mining jobs in the last 2 years because of what I call the war on coal by this administration. So you've given us some relief. National Science Foundation at $50 million. That's above enacted levels, and robust support for NASA. I long for the time when, in the '60s, when NASA was the shining star of all of our lives, and that race to the moon. For those of you who did not live through that as an adult, can't fully appreciate how terrific watching that program was. It was more than watching. It lured me back into, I had dropped out of college after a year, got bored. NASA comes along with that race to the moon, and I quit my radio station job and enrolled in physics. I was headed to the moon. But they wanted me to study math for 2 years. I wanted to shoot rockets, but I got bored with it. But anyway, NASA, in that brilliant decade, inspired more confidence in America and in our capability than anything that I can recollect. The mobilization and the marshaling of the nation's powers toward that space race probably was the greatest marshaling since the build-up to World War II, which was phenomenal. But I'm a little bit sad that NASA does not have that goal, like the race to the moon, something like that, that would galvanize the nation behind that effort again. NASA does great things. It's become somewhat bureaucratized, and I don't see the sparkle and the sizzle that I would like to see, Mr. Chairman. So hopefully what you've put in this bill for NASA will allow them to regain the excitement of the 60s and the race to the moon. Good bill, good job. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. We all share your enthusiasm for NASA and hope indeed in the years to come and the time that I'm privileged to chair this subcommittee and to represent West Houston in the Congress. We'll certainly do all we can together, arm in arm, to restore that sparkle in the eye, not only for NASA, but that'll restore that sparkle in the eye of a lot of young people to go into the sciences and invigorate this nation. And it really helps not only the human spirit, but technological innovation for the entire country.
Joe Hill?
Yes, sir.
You know, there was so much came out of NASA's charge to the moon in the 60s. Miniaturization, computers, 10 zillion things. GPS, 10 zillion things that have modernized the world and revolutionized the world. What?
Yeah, right. Tang. The orange drink, Tang. Yeah.
It was an amazing period of time.
Yeah.
And it did inspire young people to go back into the sciences. So NASA is more than a space program.
Absolutely.
It should be more than a space program.
NASA is more than a space program, absolutely right. And having been on the job for 4 months, we've done the best we could with thank you, with a very generous allocation you've given us, but it is also more than just money for NASA. I hope all of us, I really welcome your working with me, all of us together, arm in arm. NASA ought to be freed, frankly, for a lot of the civil service restraints. They're a scientific space exploration agency. We ought to find innovative ways to unleash them. We've done it in this bill to have them follow the decadal surveys. Let's think outside the box. More resources, but give them the freedom that they need to innovate. And I think part of the excitement we're going to see in the near future, Mr. Chairman, is going to be from the discovery of life on other worlds, in the discovery of Earth-like planets beyond our own solar system. NASA's discovered more exoplanets in the last 10 years as a result of these incredible space telescopes they've launched. And that will do a great deal, I think, to invigorate young people when they see there are other worlds out there that can harbor life. And then when we do discover life on another world, I'm convinced NASA will do that, and it will be first and foremost found in the oceans of Europa, by the way. Ms. Lowy, I'm privileged to recognize you.
You saw that movie, huh?
Well, wherever some of us may be at that point, I hope you send her a message, and we wish you well. I'd like to take a moment really just to thank you and congratulate you, Chairman Culverson, on your first CJS bill. You've really been so gracious and cooperative, and I personally appreciate it. And of course, my friend, Ranking Member Fatah, and full committee Chairman Rogers, we thank you for your efforts. And I know in the end, whenever that will be, we will all agree that we've made strides in putting together a really good bill. However, the House Republican Work Harder for Less budget resolution was opposed by every member on my side of the aisle, in part because it makes impossible to provide the funding necessary in the 12 appropriations bills to grow our economy and giving hardworking Americans the opportunity to succeed. Democrats support the approach taken by the President, calling for an end to the sequester and more reasonable and realistic budgeting that could help families afford college, a home, and a secure retirement. Refusing to adopt a sufficient overall allocation for discretionary investments has a significant impact on the initiatives in all the appropriation bills that grow the economy, create jobs, and make us more secure. And while I really do appreciate the Chairman's efforts and your cooperative style, the inadequate allocation creates shortcomings that are evident in the FY16 Commerce, Justice, and Science bill. Instead of providing desperately needed investments in community policing, the COPS hiring program would receive no funding. This failure to invest in community policing is particularly unfortunate, given the inclusion of a number of gun riders, including language blocking a reporting requirement on multiple purchases of rifles or shotguns by individual buyers. I do hope that as we move forward, we can eliminate riders such as these that prevent law enforcement from sensibly addressing gun crimes. While violence against women prevention and prosecution programs would appear to receive an increase above both FY15 and the President's FY16 request, it is actually below the request when you account for a transfer in victims of trafficking grants. Similar gimmicks are also included in the portions of the COPS program that would be funded. The Legal Services Corporation would fare far worse, $75 million below FY15, $152 million below the request. This is unacceptable for a vital service that provides legal help for hardworking Americans. To continue a theme in other bills, the majority has included a number of controversial riders. In addition to those on firearms I already mentioned, another provision is aimed at placing restrictions on exports to Cuba. Despite the numerous shortcomings, I thank the Chairman. What is that?
It's lunch.
Okay, we'll finish up shortly. Despite the numerous shortcomings, I thank the Chairman very much for your work related to the National Instant Criminal Background Check System, the Burn Justice Assistant Grants, and the Community Backlog Reduction Program to process sexual assault kits. These evidentiary kits have historically gone untested for decades, giving violent and culpable offenders the ability to strike again. So it is important that we fund this program at a workable level. And of course, Ranking Member Fatah, I am so appreciative for the work that you and the Chair are doing on the brain. And I look forward to the extraordinary discoveries that can save lives and prevent such pain and suffering from so many of our people, whether it's people with Alzheimer's, children with autism. It really has made and will continue to make a major difference. So in conclusion, Democrats are more than willing to support bills that include adequate spending levels to promote economic growth and are absent of unnecessary riders. And I do hope that as we move forward, this bill makes those investments and sheds misguided policy changes. Thank you again, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lowe. It really is a privilege to work with you, Mr. Fatah, Mr. Rogers, Mr. Adderholt. Happy to recognize any of the other members who would like to make any comments at this time. Mr. Honda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and let me add my thanks to the other colleagues who have thanked you, and Ranking Member Fatah and the subcommittee staff for the great work you're doing and working with us in moving these key priorities in the CJS bill. I also want to thank you for coming up on the floor and saying, Honda, you must have some priorities, put it in a letter and give it to me. That was a great thing. And so the expectations were created, and I think that some of the things I've seen have been addressed. So I would just want to thank you for that. I'm concerned with some of the top-line funding levels for NASA, as you are, especially in science and space technology. And I'm pleased to see that emphasis being placed on the physical science and biological research in the ISS. Also pleased to see that the bill prevents OMB from undercutting NASA's Stratospheric Observatory for Infrared Astronomy, better known as SOFIA, by including language that prohibits a premature senior review of this important and unique observatory. So I want to thank you for that. And also including funding to reduce the rape kit backlog across this nation. You, the past Chairman Wolf, and myself had worked very hard on making sure that this issue was front and center last year. So, because rape victims who have endured the emotional and physical trauma of sexual assault should not have to wait for justice while samples sit on the shelf untested because of the administrative issues. And this only adds to their pain and suffering, and it delays justice also. So the 500,000 rape kits that were sitting on the shelf gathering dust is moving along, and I look forward to working with you, Mr. Chairman, to take further steps to address the backlog, such as urging the FBI and local law enforcement agencies to establish pilot programs with private labs to speed up the testing of the DNA evidence. Also appreciate the inclusion of report language that highlights the importance of having the National Network for Manufacturing Innovation centers follow the intent of the RAMI Act, that the centers and their focus be driven by industry. The institutes were envisioned to form an integrated, connected network across agencies to revolutionize manufacturing, keep the U.S. on the cutting edge. And to achieve this, NIST requires funding to facilitate and create a network where institutes feed off each other's work and success, so there's that interchange. I would like to work with you, Mr. Chairman, to see if there's a way to provide this administrative funding for NIST to enable the NMI program to live up to its vision of coordinating the institutes to make a truly national multi-agency push to revolutionize manufacturing. Now, the inclusion of report language emphasizes the need for the Census to reach out to and support small population groups and provide language assistance programs beyond English and Spanish and count all U.S. citizens, even those living in Puerto Rico and the other U.S. territories, is a positive step to ensure that minorities and small populations are accurately counted in the 2020 census, and I really appreciate that attention. I do have serious concerns, however, about the funding levels for the Census Bureau, especially for planning and testing the new equipment. And we've had that discussion the last go-around, and I think there may be some new ways that we can approach that for modernizing the 2020 census and funding for the Vital American Community Survey. So I look forward to working with you, Mr. Chairman, to ensure that the Census Bureau has the funds it needs to modernize its approach to ensure accuracy and long-term cost savings of the upcoming decennial census, and to ensure that the minority groups and language groups are accurately counted and represented in the census and the ACS. So let me just add my congratulations to you, your energy, your enthusiasm. I hope it's continuously infectious and that it provides great outcomes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Honda. Mr. Adderholt, recognize anyone else wants to come?
Just really quickly, I do appreciate your time and your efforts on several of the issues we've brought up, but the salmon protection is a big deal. This last weekend I was home and we went through to the end of my district, went to Ocean Beach and then came back, Long Beach and Ocean Park, and came back, and on our way back we stopped by some of the docks. There's like a brewery there, got lunch. The docks are sinking because of the amount of sea lions sunning themselves on them after they've eaten the salmon and gorged, and they come back and they're sinking the docks, and they stink. They're terrible. So I appreciate your attention as we move forward. This is a real issue that we need to to address. I mean, there's 7,000 of them there eating these salmon that we spend as a region so much money trying to protect these wild, endangered salmon. So your help on this has been tremendous. I appreciate it.
Mr. Serrano.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, listening to you talk about salmon, and I being from the Bronx, New York, it's the beaver. But you know, just you may not know this, through the good graces of graciousness of the U.S. Army, I spent 2 years in Fairbanks, Alaska, and salmon fishing there was wonderful, and they taught me how to do it, and I actually lost the pictures, and I can't prove that I actually had these big salmons with me, you know.
Then it never
It's a
happened.
real fish story, you know, but anyway, it's one of those stories. Mr. Chairman, it's been said by many people, this is one of my favorite committees. In fact, at the expense of making people angry on my subcommittee where I'm ranking, it may be my favorite committee because it always has been. It's one of the committees that, notwithstanding our budget differences right now, expenditure differences, has agencies in it, accounts in it that don't hurt people. They don't build fences, you know, and at the border. They don't deport people. They don't do anything like that. They do space. They do science. They do stuff, good stuff that really help people. And I had the good fortune, and you're wondering why I'm sitting here now, but I had the good fortune of being ranking member to Hal Rogers on this committee and to Frank Wolf. And those were great days. Those were the days when the bill got 390 votes.
If the gentleman would yield, I happened to be in the last position on the committee at that time, and it just proves that the Bible was correct when it says the last shall be first.
Well, you see, now that comment is going to make me take 30 seconds to tell the story of why I'm here. Because some of the younger folks may say, why are you there, you know? Why am I here? So I was ranking member, but a gentleman from West Virginia named Alan Mollahan was actually senior to me on the subcommittee, and that's how Democrats do things, seniority on the subcommittee. So when a gentleman named Tom DeLay did away with the VA HUD committee, which he was chairing, which gave me the opportunity to be, that he was ranking member, he reclaimed his seniority. Now we took over the majority a couple of years later, and they brought back the Financial Services Postal Service Committee, which we're on now. And in order for me to get the chairmanship of that committee, I had to give up everything I had. So then in the second round, I got, of course, my favorite committee, Commerce, Justice, Science, but I was there. And so people are still wondering, how can a guy that was ranking member twice be this, this seniority? But it only proves that DeLay made you ranking member. You know?
In my church, they say the Lord works in mysterious ways.
That's the story. Mr. Chairman, I have one small concern. It's a serious concern, but I think it's one that may take care of itself as we go along, and that's the Legal Services Corporation, of course. You know, I remind everybody that it was a program created by Richard Nixon, who felt, amongst many feelings that he had, good or bad, that everybody had a right at legal representation, you know, and that perhaps Legal Services Corporation, and people would argue this point, is one agency that really speaks to who we are as a nation, you know, that everybody has a right to legal representation. So I hope that as we go along, we can fix it the way we always did in the past and have done so in the past. And lastly, not to finish off on a negative note, as I've told many people, I represent two districts, one in the Bronx and one in the place I was born, the territory, colony of Puerto Rico. And I want to thank you for your and Mr. Fattah's concern for the territories. And, you know, we always, I wish I could change the language we use from the 50 states to the 50 states and the territories, because that's who we are. We're a nation of 5 million other folks who live in the territories. And the Arecibo Observatory is very, very important to Puerto Rico and to Puerto Ricans throughout the 50 states and the territory. And it's good for our national security and our national science work. So I'm glad to see that you, from what I've been told, have language saying that if they want to do anything with it, they first have to talk to you. And I know what you and Shaka will do when they come talk to you about maybe making some changes that may not be beneficial. So I want to thank you, and as we go along, I'll be available to help you in any way I can. And congratulations. And it's a good thing. We have a personal joke going. It's a good thing this committee doesn't have immigration in it, because that's the only thing you and I disagree on. So it's have fun, Mr. Chairman. You're doing a great job.
Judge Carter.
Well, Mr. Chairman, to meet an obligation I made yesterday, I'm following Comandante Serrano. He requires that new title. He said if I can be judge, he wants to be Comandante. And I just want to point out that even though on my subcommittee we do build a few fences, we will still take care of the immigration problem in Puerto Rico for you. And thank you for the good work, John. Fatah, you've done a great job. It's a good bill. Justice bill, and that's important. So thank you.
Mr. Adderhold.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and again, want to congratulate you and the Ranking Member Fatah for your work. This bill's got great things in it, from NOAA to FBI to NASA, including SLS, and which the funding there is crucial for their mission, and will help keep the program on schedule. So thank you for your diligence in working on that with us. And so again, I just don't have anything to say in particular, but congratulations, and look forward to working with you as we move this bill. And also, I do have a motion. What I would move that the
With the Chairman Neal.
yes, certainly.
You know, we've got universal praise for this bill here today, and the profuse praise on that side of the table portends great success for this bill. I'm sure all of the people who've spoken so positively about this bill will vote for it. You would think. You would think.
And I hope reiterate some of those remarks in full committee, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make sure does anybody else have a, yeah. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and as I guess, one of the newest members of this committee, I want to thank you and Ranking Member Fatah for the bipartisan spirit that you brought to both the process and the product before us. I also want to acknowledge the staff of the committee for the hard work that they do to put this together. As both Ms. Herrera-Butler and I have mentioned before, folks take fish in our fisheries very seriously in our neck of the woods, and your support for the salmon habitat issues, for the conservation measures, the effort to support our hatcheries, it's a big deal. It's a big deal for our fishing industry. It's a huge deal for our economy. It's also a huge deal in terms of meeting our treaty and trust obligations to the Native American tribes in our area. So I want to thank you for that. I would like to echo the comments around the Legal Services Corporation and the desire also to see some effort to assist our veterans and military members and their families. If there can be some additional attention paid for that, I would love to work with both the majority and the minority in that regard. But very, very grateful for the hard work that went into this and the bipartisan spirit that you brought to the process. So thank you.
Mr. Chairman, before you go to the motion, I just, we thank you for the salmon. The rest of the country benefits, but it's also, we have treaty obligations with Native American tribes relative to the hatcheries there too. So we're glad to work with you on this. And to Chairman Rogers' comment, since I've been ranking member, we've always produced a bipartisan product and a full bill that, I know I read this article saying that we're getting to the heart of your batting order in terms of appropriation bills. And, I think you can tell by these comments that we have a product that we are very pleased with the accommodations to the minorities' concerns. There are a few remaining items that I'm going to work on the chairman on as we get ready. You got to, warm up the swing, all right?
And I want to stress, as we move down, I hope we'll find some additional money for legal services. I hope you'll work with me to co-author some legislation to get
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
deductions, dollar for dollar, for attorneys that want to donate their time, so we avoid using appropriated dollars, which are so scarce and so precious, and we'll need additional funding for National Science Foundation. But that's a little bit down the road, and we're going to work on those things together, arm in arm.
Well, I like tax credits too. I sponsored the American Opportunity Tax Credit on the college side, which gives a write-off dollar for dollar. But we do have to make sure, as you know, the Constitution requires, you know, we are a nation of laws, and you are defenseless if you have to go into a civil court and you don't have a lawyer.
Exactly.
We have veterans who are facing foreclosures who use legal services, you know, to get representation in those matters, or their cars being repossessed. I work with Judge Carter on the Fort Hood situation, you know, and I know of his concern for these veterans. Well, Community Legal Services, or the Legal Service Corporation across the country, is helping veterans who are facing not a situation like at Fort Hood, but everyday challenges that we need to make sure that they're helped with. But I thank you, and I look forward to the motion.
You bet. They're a top priority for me
All
to
right,
make sure
thank
we
you.
get any extra money. And I also, very quickly on the history, before we do the motion, Tom DeLay moved the jurisdiction of this subcommittee. As you remember, Mr. Chairman, that the NASA used to have to compete with the Veterans Administration for money, which very, very difficult. And so when Tom became majority leader, one of his top priorities was to, in order to protect NASA, to make sure the nation's leadership in space exploration was unchallenged, moved the jurisdiction over to this subcommittee, and was even able to get the Senate to do the same. So that's how and why it got moved. And at this time, I'll be happy to recognize Mr. Adderholt for a motion.
Yeah, I move that the chairman's mark be reported to the full committee.
All those in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The bill stands approved, and I'd ask unanimous consent that the staff be authorized to make technical and conforming adjustments. And if you could, members, please leave your bill and the report at your desk. And thank you again.